Sup, guys? Toad back with you. The slump continues or resumes after a really nice 5-2 Saturday. I go 0-4 yesterday in the NFL. I I liked those spots, man. I couldn't control myself. I suppose maybe I should have been a little bit more selective about it, but even so, I still would have gone 0-3 or maybe 0-2 if I restrained myself. 0-7 run in the NFL. This is just ridiculous. And after that nice Saturday where I got myself way up on the year, well, not way up, but up enough to have like a decent amount of padding on the year. Now I'm all the way back down to like the break even mark again. I mean, we could talk about some of these games. I was just going over what happened, doing the post mortem after my death yesterday. I mean, it looked like it was off to a start where I thought I was going to at least, or at worst, go 1-1 in the afternoon games here. This Miami game, this was the biggest amount of bullshit out of any of my plays. Miami absolutely should have covered this game. The Colts only scored 16 in the entire game. Miami was almost covering wire to wire in this game. Miami was up 10-3 going into halftime. They're up 10-0 almost in the entire first half. Indy basically didn't even score in the first half. Then, of course, it was tied, and then it was a 3-point game all the way up until the final 2 minutes of the game when Indy scored another field goal. And then the Dolphins, of course, had one more chance. But I think at that point, Huntley was not even in the game. Did he even start the game? I guess he did. I don't know if he just sucked or if he got hurt or whatever, because I know Tim Boyle was in there at the end. And it's like, yeah, is he going to lead you on a touchdown drive? Probably not. But even so, Miami, they outgained Indy in this game, outpossessed them. They lost the turnover battle by one. I mean, extremely frustrating in that one. That should have been a cover. You have an almost wire-to-wire cover, and then you lose on a final field goal there. I mean, no team laying 3.5 that scores almost zero in the entire first half, only a 16 in the game, should ever cover that spread. Detroit, Minnesota, I mean, what can you do? I mean, that was a pretty close game on the wrong side of it. Never should have played this Carolina-Washington game, although it started out with a pick six, like right away. So you know this game's probably over, like almost immediately. But Jaden Daniels also got hurt, like immediately in that game. He was done. He was out of the game. So you think, well, you have Carolina, man. That will help you, right? If Jaden Daniels is out. I'm not so sure about that, man, because Carolina, I think, at least had prepared to face Jaden Daniels. They were not prepared to face Marcus Mariota, although I don't know if Mariota really adds another dimension that Jaden Daniels doesn't have. I mean, Daniels has the additional dimension of being able to run, where Mariota can do that a little bit, but nowhere near as much. But still, they're different quarterbacks, so probably the playbook is going to change a little bit, and Carolina, at the very least, wasn't ready for that. So what can you do about that? And then Kansas City, San Francisco, also a loss, obviously, but San Francisco did not help themselves out very much in this game. I mean, they had a couple of crucial turnovers in this game. I know Purdy, I think, threw like a really crucial interception. He had 3 interceptions. The game was definitely closer than the final score looked, and it was the game statistically could have gone either way, really. Just atrocious, really, the turnovers in that game. Like I said, at least one of them was at a very crucial moment in the game. What can you even do? There was another incident in the game where one of the Chiefs' defenders hit Trent Williams, the Niners' best offensive lineman, in the head. He responded. He retaliated, which he shouldn't have done. It's stupid. Retaliated by hitting that defender in the head. But the refs are so Chiefs biased. Both of those players should have been ejected from the game, dude, or at least penalized. The Chiefs player doesn't get penalized at all, and Williams gets thrown out of the game for retaliation, which, yes, I do think he should have gotten thrown out of the game, but the Chiefs player also should have, and he didn't get penalized at all, and he was the instigator. It's just ridiculous how much Kansas City can get away with. Did it impact the result in the game? I'm not going to say that it did, but still, 49ers being without Williams, their best offensive lineman, certainly can have an effect there. I'm just pissed about it. We'll talk about today's card here. This is going to be a quick video because there's not much going on today, and I have no viewers either, but we only have one hockey game today. Baseball is off as we prepare to go into a Yankees-Dodgers World Series, or I think the Dodgers are actually the home team in that series. You can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think It's actually the top two records in baseball, I think, and the Dodgers had the number one record. I might be wrong about that, but also in the baseball, in the era where they've like done this playoff expansion or whatever you want to call it in baseball, I believe the one seeds have never won the World Series, I think, and now, or maybe the Astros are the only one that have. But now, obviously, one of those teams is going to. Excuse me, with one seed versus one seed there. So we'll see what happens once we get to that. I was considering playing the Dodgers last night, by the way, because I kind of liked the side, but then they announced who their starting pitcher was, and I forget who it was, but it was some guy who's mostly out of their bullpen, so I think he probably went with an opener approach. I didn't even look at how many innings he went or whatever, but his stats against the Mets were ridiculous, dude. Whoever was the opener for the Dodgers last night, the Mets were 0 for 21 off of him lifetime. So that was an indicator. I'm like, man, like this matchup just got a little bit better for the Dodgers there, and the line did go up a little bit more on the Dodgers. So maybe I should have played it. I don't know. Let's talk about today quickly before I get out of here. We have hockey, one game, and we have two Monday Night Football games, which I did already talk about on my other show, but after listening to some professionals, maybe I've changed my feelings on the total in the first of the two games, which I'll talk about in a second. Tampa Bay, Toronto's the hockey game. Toronto's down from minus 140 to minus 136 as a home favorite. 56% of the tickets, though, are on Tampa, with 98% of the cash on Toronto. So the line has gone down a little bit, but it does look like the cash discrepancy is coming in on the Toronto side. I do not have much of a read on this game at all. I mean, I can tell you, the team split the season series last year 2-2 and split their home games individually as well, 1-1. Each team won one road game and one home game last year. So it was a pretty tight matchup between these two teams. Toronto, I believe, did eliminate Tampa from the playoffs the year before that. I don't remember if that was a game, or if that was a series where Vasilevsky was hurt or not, because I remember he was hurt to start last year. He's the Tampa goaltender. He's one of the better goaltenders in the league. He is not hurt now, though, so whatever happened in those in the past, not totally relevant here. Toronto, looking at them, well, I'm looking at the home team first. I usually look at the road team first, but whatever. I have Toronto up. Toronto, I mean, they're coming off a game where they lost to the New York Rangers pretty badly. It's still a game you do get emotionally up for, though, against the Rangers. I mean, they're one of the top teams. They won the President's Trophy last year, but didn't do particularly well in that game with a 4-1 loss. Statistically, the game was actually not really indicative of, or the final score was not really indicative of how the game actually played. Statistically, the game was a lot closer, with Toronto actually winning the shots and the face-off percentage a little bit, although the shots might have been because they started flinging up desperation shots because they were behind. But still, the game looks like it did play closer than that final score would indicate. Still a big game that you get emotionally up for, but I don't think Toronto's going to come into this game not focused on Tampa, because this is also kind of it's a little bit of a rivalry with the way these two teams have been playing against each other a lot recently and having that playoff series a couple years ago. So two teams that have been in the playoffs the last couple of years, multiple times really over the last few years, I guess I would say. I think, did Tampa not make it last year? I don't even remember, but still, these are two of the better teams in the Eastern Conference. I think they're both going to be focused for this game, both going to get up for this game. Toronto is not traveling. They're staying at home. They had yesterday off. And I think they might have had another day off before that previous game too. Yeah, they're pretty well rested because that was the only game that they played the last few days against the Rangers. As far as Tampa Bay, they're coming off a loss to Ottawa. I mentioned I liked Ottawa in that game. As I knock my mic, to some extent, I did like Ottawa in that game on Saturday. Did not make one of my plays, although I was 2-0 in hockey anyway on Saturday. But Ottawa, I liked the spot. I thought it was a sandwich spot for Tampa, coming off beating Vegas and Vancouver, well, and Carolina, really. So this was like the first kind of overlooked spot in their schedule where they could potentially overlook their opponent. I think maybe they did, and now they're facing Toronto. So Tampa could be in a little bit of a bounce back mode here on the road here, but it looks like they're getting the public tickets, man. And Toronto, Tampa tends to get more of the public tickets just because they're always a very high-scoring team, so the public tends to prefer them. So it's a tough game to read, man, because my first reaction was, oh, Tampa's in a bounce-back spot here, but they are traveling, but only from Ottawa to Toronto with one day off, so not a lot of travel. The rest spot and travel spot really are not a huge advantage or disadvantage one way or the other. So my thought was, well, Tampa's kind of in a bounce back spot, whereas Toronto is coming off a pretty big game, even though they did lose 4-1 against the Rangers. So my situational lean initially was Tampa might be the side that makes more sense, but based on the market read here, it seems like that is not really the case. So obviously I'm not playing this game, but those are my thoughts on that. Monday Night Football, to finish off the video here, 2 games here. Ravens-Bucks is the first game up. These games are going to overlap a little bit. Probably this first game here is going to get more of the eyeballs than the other game because it looks like the more interesting game because it's Lamar Jackson against Baker Mayfield, of course. Ravens are down from 5 to 3.5 now as a road favorite. There were still 4s hanging around. I don't know if there still are. 60% of the tickets and 54% of the cash on the Ravens. So the Ravens are one of those kind of stereotypical Monday night public road favorites with less of the cash than the tickets on them. So it does look like a spot where you would potentially want to fade the Baltimore Ravens in this spot. And that is the way that I would lean in this game. I would just lean with the market read there. These anti-public home underdogs tend to be like the blind way to play a lot of these, although the odds makers have figured this out. Long ago, they figured it out that these Monday night home underdogs were cashing at a really high rate, but they're still not really necessarily not the way to go. I mean, I think they're still the way to go more often than not, even though the books have had to adjust the lines a little bit for it. Still, I mean, look at the price on Baltimore looks a little bit high to me. I mean, Baltimore hasn't done anything wrong in the last 4 weeks. They've just been beating a bunch of like pretty quality opponents and putting up a lot of high point totals against all of them. Dallas, Buffalo, Cincinnati, Washington. Really over the course of the entire season, Baltimore, they've only faced 2 good defenses so far out of these 6 teams, really, which was Kansas City and Buffalo are the 2 pretty decent defenses. Kansas City's is actually good. Buffalo's pretty decent. The rest of these defenses, Raiders, Dallas, Cincinnati, Washington, all those defenses have been pretty bad this year. So Baltimore might, their offense at least might look a little bit better than it actually is. Still, I do think they have a very good offense and a good defense, really. But the defense does look like it's been struggling a little bit, but they have been facing some pretty quality offenses as of late, too. Like all these teams, Dallas, Buffalo, Cincinnati, Washington, those are all teams that can put up points on you. So I don't know if I'm going to fault Baltimore's defense necessarily. Tampa Bay, I mean, their offense has been doing okay recently as well. So you may expect some points. I know in my initial read on this was, these teams are scoring so many points recently that there might be value on the under. Like the total looks like a little bit high for a Monday night game, and I usually never want to play overs in Monday night games because that's where the public is going to be coming in. But I did hear some professionals coming in and saying they do actually like the over in this game. So I don't know. I mean, I'm not sure I can totally get on board with that. Just the way that things look here, I think these teams have just looked too high scoring recently. Really, I think at some point there's got to be some sort of regression. But yes, both of these offenses certainly can score. But I do think Baltimore's defense is maybe better than it looked the last few weeks. I do still think they have a pretty decent defense. Not as good as last year's, but I mean, I couldn't possibly be. Last year under McDonald, that defense was a historically good defense. But I still think they're a pretty good defense. Tampa Bay, I think their defense is maybe getting a little bit healthier. They've been dealing with a lot of defensive injuries, but they have a lot of high point totals. Well, mostly over the last couple of games, some pretty high point totals, but they've also scored a lot themselves over these last 2 games here. So really tough to read here. And Tampa Bay put up 51 against New Orleans, just putting up a ton of points in that game. So that looks almost too good, I think, as well. So both teams are coming off games where they looked really good and put up a lot of points. Baltimore against Washington, Tampa against New Orleans. The performance against Washington may be a little bit more impressive, but still, Washington does not have a good defense. New Orleans' defense is actually probably not as bad, but New Orleans' offense is just in total shambles. And Tampa's still allowed 27 to that massively injured offense. So that doesn't necessarily look that great for Tampa, even though I know they held New Orleans scoreless for 3 out of those 4 quarters. Just very, very difficult game for me to read, man. With 2 teams coming up big games, they're both kind of in spots where I would look to be fading them because they're coming off high point totals, and that would be a spot where they tend to get a little bit overconfident and you want to look to go against them, but now they're playing each other on Monday night, so it becomes a big game. So My opinion would be to lean to the Tampa side. Tampa also, their stadium, I think Tampa actually kind of lucked out that they had 2 road games in a row because the hurricane had come through. Uh, Hurricane Milton. So Tampa, I mean, I think they're still probably cleaning up their stadium, and I guess it's going to be ready for this game. But this is going to be the first time they're playing at home since the hurricane came through, so maybe that'll be a little bit of an extra kind of emotional motivator there for Tampa. The first time playing for the home crowd that's been hit hard by that hurricane. So they might step up their game a little bit for that reason as well. And it's a little bit of an unfamiliar environment for Baltimore. This is a road out of conference game. And road out of conference games tend to be the lesser games on a team's schedule. So Baltimore is in that spot. They do have a divisional game up next, but it is Cleveland. Are they really going to be looking ahead to Cleveland the way they've been playing? Probably not. And for Tampa, this is between 2 divisional games as well. But, I mean, you're hosting the Baltimore Ravens on Monday night, man. So you're not going to overlook the Ravens. I don't think the Ravens are going to overlook the Tampa Bay Buccaneers either. But based on all that and on the market read, lean would be to the Buccaneers. And total, like I said, I know some professionals like the over in this game. It's up from 47 to 50. 82% of the tickets and only 74% of the cash on the over, though. So it is a public over. The line has been driven up a bit. I don't know if it's just because the odds makers knew the public was going to be coming in on this, or if this is actually some professional money also coming in on the over and agreeing with the public. I'm not sure because the cash percentage is a little bit less than the ticket percentage. Tough read on that one, man. For both the side and the total, very tough for me to read. Like I said, I was initially wanting to kind of bank on there being a regression. I wasn't going to play this game, but just thinking there might be a regression here with both teams scoring so many points recently that on a Monday night game, it looks like it's kind of a tough matchup. Teams that, aren't that familiar with each other, you might see more of a feeling out process early on was kind of my thinking, and that maybe this game wouldn't be as high scoring, but I don't really know. Who knows, man? I don't know what the condition of the field is going to be like either, but a lot of times if the surface is all ground up and stuff, it can actually help the offense or really hurt the defense more because the defense they have to react to what the offense is doing, and they can be delayed in their reaction and slipping on the surface and whatever. Very, very tough read overall in that game. Who knows what's going to happen in that game, but both of those teams have been playing high-scoring games recently, so maybe that trend will continue. But both teams, I think, are actually probably underrated defensively at this point, though, and maybe a little bit overrated offensively. Chargers-Cardinals is where my stronger lean is. If I was going to play anything tonight, it would be on the Cardinals, but you could have gotten 2.5 earlier this week, and now it looks like, it just went down to 1. Probably still 1.5, so there's not too much of a difference between 2.5 and 1.5. So, I mean, if I was going to play anything, it would still be taking the Cardinals, taking the points. Although, like I said, you missed the 2.5. Excuse me. If you like the Cardinals. Chargers, like I said, they opened up a pick 'em, it looks like, but they definitely were 2.5 in the middle of the week, and now it's down to 1. 53% of the tickets coming in on the Chargers. I think the public sentiment is probably they like Harbaugh, they like Herbert, they don't like the Cardinals as much. Cardinals have 71% of the cash on them, though, and the line, like I said, has been knocked down from 2.5 to 1, so it looks like there is actual money coming in on the Cardinals side. I agree with that, which I'll explain in a minute. 43.5 up to 44.5 on the total, but 44.5 juice to the under. 73% of the tickets are on the over, but 77% of the cash on the under. So it looks like there is a ticket cash disparity on both the side and the total in this one, where it looks like the more the higher cash percentage is on the Cardinals and on the under in this one, which those seem to conflict with each other, though, because the Chargers are the better of these two defenses, I think. So the Chargers probably, if you like the Chargers, it would probably make more sense that this would be a lower scoring game. Whereas if you like the Cardinals, it would probably make more sense that some points are going to be put up in this game because the Cardinals offense actually is more talented than the Chargers offense. And I know Justin Herbert's there, but I mean, the Chargers don't have Keenan Allen anymore. They don't have Austin Eckler anymore. Chargers have turned into more of a defensive team with Harbaugh there. I mean, that kind of makes sense that would be the case. Herbert is also still hobbled, man. I mean, he's been playing through an injury, and he just continues to go out there. So he is not the Justin Herbert that we know. I don't think he's 100% still. So he's been hobbled by that leg injury or whatever it is. So he hasn't looked that terrific either. So as far as this is concerned, I talked about this on my Sunday NFL video as well, but the Chargers, I think they're in the worst situational spot because they are coming off a divisional win, even though I know Denver, maybe not the best team, but Denver hasn't been playing that badly. I think they're above 500 still, right? So Chargers are still battling Denver in the division here. Chargers, that was a big win for the Chargers on the road going into high elevation as well. So now they're having to come out of high elevation and play a second straight road game on back-to-back weeks. That's usually that's not the easiest spot in the NFL. And they're also playing a fourth straight road game in 6 weeks, not 5 weeks, because they had a bye, which was actually in between the Kansas City and the Denver games. They actually had a bye, so that will help mitigate that a little bit. But still, only playing one home game over a 5-game span, that's not easy either, man. They're playing all these road games. It could catch up to them a bit. So it does look like it is a difficult spot in that regard. And coming off a win in a game that means more, because again, talk about road out-of-conference games. Both of these games involve somewhat public road favorites, somewhat public road favorites who are playing an out-of-conference game on the road. So I do lean to both home underdogs in this one for that reason as well, just because, again, like I always say, those road out-of-conference games tend to be the games that mean the least on a team's schedule because the way that the tiebreakers go, the conference record means more than the out-of-conference record. So that's just the way it is. But still, you are playing under a Monday night spotlight and playing a nationally televised game. So there is that. So that could help motivate all the teams involved as well. As far as the Cardinals are concerned, Cardinals, they're coming off a blowout loss up in Green Bay, but that was a tough spot for them. I liked Green Bay in that one. I probably should have played it, to be honest. It was close to being a play for me because the Cardinals were in a pretty classic letdown spot where not only did they beat San Francisco, but it was on the road and they came back and beat the 49ers. That was a huge win for the Cardinals. Then they had to play a second straight road game and have to go up into kind of a cool, rainy environment in Green Bay. The weather was not really nice in that game, so Green Bay was more used to weather like that and more equipped to handle that game, and they handled Arizona. And Arizona, I think the final score was a little bit misleading in this one too because Arizona, I mean, they certainly got outplayed, but they also had a lot of turnovers. So it was just a really messy game for Arizona in that one. I think this is kind of a bounce back spot for them. As I've said, Arizona's been really tough to gauge because they've just been like total schizo team basically, where 1 week they get totally destroyed and the next week they destroy their opponent. But I've had a good gauge on them. I played on Arizona in the Rams game and got that one right. I was right on my lean on the Detroit game. I was right on my lean on the Buffalo game there. I didn't get the Washington game right, though, so I lost on that one. That was a loser money-wise for me. And then my leans in the San Francisco and Green Bay were right as well. So in my pick'em pools, I've gotten every Arizona game right except for the Washington one, and that was one that I actually bet. So I'm only 1-1 in my bets on Arizona games, but still, I've had a good gauge on this hard-to-gauge Arizona team just because when a team's really schizo like that, in some ways, if you get the right read on them in one game, then you're going to have the right read on them game after game because it just zigzags all over the place. And like 1 week they play really well, the next week they're in a letdown, and the next week they're in a bounce back, etc. So maybe that's kind of what's going on with Arizona here. So this looks like it would be a spot where Arizona's going to play a better game. So I like that. And the other thing I like about this, and Arizona, so I think they're in a bounce back spot, as I was saying, but they're probably going to be focused on this game. I mean, they have Jim Harbaugh, Justin Herbert coming into their house, and up next they just have a bad Miami team, so they're not going to be looking ahead to that. So they're hosting a Monday night game, which is not really something that Arizona does as often. They tend to not get these spotlight games as much. So I think they're going to step it up, but also the other thing to point out in this game, Arizona has faced a much more difficult schedule. I mean, look at the schedule they face. The worst team they face is probably the Rams, I guess. The Rams and Washington, they both are not very good defensively, but still. The Rams, I mean, they're not like a bad team really, but other than that, they played Buffalo, playoff team from last year, probably will be one again. Detroit, playoff team last year, probably will be again. Washington, looking much better this year with Jaden Daniels. They're a very upstart team. Looked like they maybe headed for a playoff spot this year. San Francisco won the conference last year. Huge divisional rival and playoff team last year, obviously, and probably should be one again. Green Bay, playoff team last year. should be again. Of course, Green Bay and Detroit both won playoff games last year as well. So Arizona's faced a gauntlet, man. So you can look and you can say, well, Arizona's defense has sucked. Yeah, but they've also faced a bunch of good offenses. I mean, most of these offenses can put up a ton of points, especially these last 4 teams they faced: Detroit, Washington, San Francisco, Green Bay. The last 2 of those on the road, those are offenses that can do a lot of damage. And Arizona lost 3 out of those 4. They didn't do that badly against Detroit's offense, really, but that is not an easy schedule at all. So I don't think Arizona's defense is good, but I think maybe it looks worse than it actually is because of the opponents that they face. So I think that should mitigate that somewhat. So you should keep that in mind, where the Chargers are going to be the worst offense they've faced this season, probably, except for maybe the Rams. But the Rams still had Cooper Kupp. I think he got injured in that game against them. So the Rams were a little bit healthier at that point as well. Chargers, I think, are probably the weakest offense, with a hobbled Herbert with not much around him. And I don't know if Joe Alt is back or not, their rookie tackle, who's probably already one of their best offensive linemen. He's been injured the last few weeks, too, so I don't know if he's going to be back. So this Chargers offense, like I said, I think it's probably the weakest offense Arizona gets to face this entire season so far. So Arizona might be a little bit better than they look. And Arizona's offense is pretty good. I mean, they can do some damage. I know they've had games where they've been held down, but a lot of those games, they also just make a ton of mistakes. I mean, Kyler Murray is really hit or miss as well. I mean, he can run all over you, and he can look like a superstar one day, and then he can look like a total rookie in the next, where he's making a ton of mistakes. You never really know what you're going to get out of him. So that makes it a little bit of an iffy handicap, but still. Chargers, because I think Arizona's faced a way more difficult schedule than you might think, and the Chargers have faced a weaker schedule than you might think. Chargers have faced a significantly weaker schedule, and because of that, I do think that the lean is the Arizona way in this one for those reasons, and because of the scheduling spot against the Chargers. But look at the Chargers schedule, man. This has not been anywhere near as much of a gauntlet. They opened up against the Raiders, who, I mean, at this point, they're in total disarray. I know they had Devontae Adams still at that point, but still. I don't think that's a very impressive win, beating the Raiders at home. They beat Carolina. I mean, okay, probably the worst team in football. Lost to Pittsburgh and Kansas City. Those are the only 2 losses. In Pittsburgh, they can't lose, man. They put Russell Wilson in the first half. He looked awful last night. You're thinking, why did they do this? I was completely questioning the decision. Why did they do that? But then in the second half, he did quite well against a good Jets defense. And the Jets, they just made way too many turnovers last night, too. Aaron Rodgers, multiple interceptions again. I don't know what is going on with the Jets, man. I mean, they had held Pittsburgh completely down last night. It was 15-6 almost throughout the entire first half. And then Rodgers was driving the Jets in Pittsburgh territory again. Looked like they were going to increase the lead even further. He throws a pick, and then the entire momentum shifts. Pittsburgh scores to cut it to 2, and Jets never scored again. I think they didn't even score in the second half. And Pittsburgh scored like 31 unanswered points or something. Just totally insane. I don't know how that happened last night. Completely insane, but whatever. Pittsburgh and Kansas City are the Chargers' only 2 losses, and Pittsburgh's at 5-2 right now and certainly have a good defense. So on the road, I mean, that's not a bad loss for the Chargers. And then, of course, the Chiefs. Chargers played them pretty tough, and they did blow a 10-0 lead in that game, but still, I mean, it's the Kansas City Chiefs. So the 2 teams that have beaten the Chargers, the 2 losses the Chargers have, I mean, they are against the 2 best teams that they faced, and then they've won against all the weak teams that they faced. Denver, I still don't think Denver is very good. I mean, Bo Nix, rookie quarterback, he's still playing like a rookie. He has not put up good stats, and Denver's offense is just not good, although their defense does look like one of the better defenses in the league. So, and on the road, I mean, not a horrible win there for the Chargers, but the other 2 wins really don't look that great. And these offenses that they face, though, that's the thing. These offenses are all not very good. So even the 2 wins, which I was going to say the 2 losses they've had, which are up against teams that are combined 11-2, I think is what their combined record is. Even in those games, those teams are way better defensively than offensively. Pittsburgh and Kansas City, really good defenses. Their offenses struggle a little bit. So Los Angeles, the Chargers, they really have not faced a great offense this entire season. The last 3 weeks, they faced good defenses, but teams that don't play well offensively, really. So the best offenses that they faced is the Kansas City Chiefs. But their offense is still, I mean, it's Patrick Mahomes, definitely good, but still, like, the surrounding cast for him, not necessarily that great. And all the rest of the offenses they've faced, not very good. So this Chargers defense may be a little bit overrated right now. And like I pointed out with Arizona, their defense might be a little bit underrated right now because Arizona's faced a ton of really good offenses. The Chargers have faced almost no good offenses. So that's what we have going on here. Arizona is actually going to be one of the better offenses the Chargers have faced this season, and the Chargers are going to be one of the weakest offenses Arizona has faced this season. So I do like Arizona in this game. And as far as the total is concerned, I mean, like I said, I guess probably still just lean with where the cash is on the under, which might, again, it might be kind of a feeling out process for these teams where they are going to not try anything ridiculous on offense early. I don't really know though, because if you like the Chargers, you probably like this game to be lower scoring. But I do like Arizona. The best lean out of any of the three games would be the Arizona side today for me, and that's going to do it for me. Stacks, yes, the slump is doing awful. Thank you, sir. Yesterday was awful. It was a historically bad NFL day for me. I think it probably tied my worst NFL day ever. I don't know if I've ever actually had an 0-4 NFL Sunday before. I don't know. I usually don't have 4 games. I usually have 3 or sometimes 2. Maybe it's happened before that I've gone 0-4, but I don't remember it happening. Possibly it has, but man, just historically bad. I don't think I've ever been on an 0-7 NFL run. It's just ridiculous. I don't even see how it's possible. It's almost impossible. The Miami one at least should have been a win yesterday. But anyway, that's going to do it for me. I'm Tower Gang Toad. Of course, follow the Tower Gang Podcast, the most offensive, hilarious comedy podcast on the planet. Sign up for the Patreon, patreon.com/Tower Gang. You get bonus content, pre-show, post-show. I can't get my camera to focus because my TV is like freaking out and because I brought down the screen that I was sharing, which is a much lighter background there. Patreon.com/Tower Gang. You get live pre-show, post-show, bonus content. Hang out with us on Telegram. And go see us at Bohemian Grove at the end of the week. I don't know if we're actually doing a Wednesday episode this week. I will be out on Wednesday if we are doing one this week, but I think we're not doing one probably. And we're going to do episode 200 is going to be live at Bohemian Grove Saturday evening. It's in Central Florida. I think there might still be tickets available. So if you're in that area or if you just want to travel, get yourself a ticket and come out Friday, Saturday. We got a bunch of conspiracy podcasts on Friday, including Clint's Liberty Lockdown. And then on Saturday, we got comedy podcasts with Revenge of the Sis, Comedy Culture podcast. Those guys are hilarious. Tower Gang, of course, we are hilarious, I must say. And then we got a cringe core with Jay Dyer, which he's going to be freestyle cringe rapping, I guess. And I'm going to be we're going to be alternating between that and karaoke with me, where I'm going to let people come up and do karaoke probably, and I might do a song myself, maybe just because I can't help myself. But it's going to be a limited availability for karaoke there. If it's going to be just an hour of that going back and forth. And then there is a comedy show Saturday night headlined by the hilarious Leonardo Joni. She is bass. She is awesome. And we got Mark Random is in the lineup as well. I think some other guests I'm not even aware of. I don't even know who else is going to be in that comedy lineup, man, but it is going to be good. So if you can come out and hang out with us there for a couple of days, that's going to do it for me, man. Have a good day today. Peace out. Let's get back on track. The NBA starts tomorrow. I don't know if I'm going to have any NBA plays on the first day. I know my Celtics are playing the Knicks. It's going to be an interesting one. I'll talk about that game tomorrow, actually. So we got NHL resumes tomorrow with more games. NBA starts tomorrow. And college football is on tap the rest of the week as well. Let's have a good one, man. Peace out.